Dex Ereon, welcome to the Lyle podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We know each other very, I would say, peripherally. Like I would, recognize your face. We're, on the social media, inner, the interweb overlapping, but we know each other. As far as I'm aware, from the climbing gym, a local climbing gym in Los Angeles. And just so glad to have you here. I'm very interested in what made me want to have this conversation with you was actually just kind of what you're posting on social media. And I don't want to take away from anything that you're gonna share. I really like people to describe in their own words kind of but I'm really intrigued by the conversations and the way you're trying to impact people's lives. So I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your curiosity and for reaching out.
Yeah,
It's a joy to connect in any way with people, and so I'm happy to be here.
awesome. Well, let's get into, so question number one is just what is your how would you describe your work and vocation?
Yeah, my work and vocation is centered around helping people build a positive relationship with fear, with the um, end goal being reconnecting or connecting for the first time with their unique potential and hopefully some joy along with that. And this is something that has been a work in progress for almost a decade now. And
Mm,
I think in the last um, 2 years, it's really, for me, it's kind of been the the realization of all of this groundwork that I've been doing for the last decade, and I'm getting to a point where it's becoming a full time gig, and it's weird. It's not uh, for so long. It was not something that I was pointing the ship towards. It
oh,
was
mm.
this kind of nebulous of curiosity and experiences and making connections very organically and opportunities coming up very organically, but not a lot of intentional steering. And and now I feel, kind of practicing what I preach, taking into consideration my own fears, um, and understanding where those come from and how they might be uh, sometimes helping me out and sometimes holding me back. I'm now really excited to be more intentional about this process and uh, yeah, put in the discipline and the consistency and make it my maybe my life's work. We'll see.
Amazing, amazing. Um, I think that's a large part of what piqued me. So I know from the climbing gym that that's probably, I knew that probably first that you do workshops on
Mm-hmm.
fear
Mm-hmm.
related to climbing.
Yeah.
And and then when I saw like just how intentionally you were like that this was like a thing for you, like this is like a much bigger, not just like, oh, let me help you climb better, but this is like a what's your relationship to fear in your life. And
Mm-hmm.
that is very that just really sparked my interest, and I felt like a synergy with you because I think a lot about life in general, and
Me too.
I think a lot about like what it means to live a life well lived.
Mm-hmm.
And fear has been like a, oh, that's up there, like if you're gonna live a meaningful life, like, wow, you've got to really be acquainted with fear because in my experience, so I do themes every year. I don't know, like pick a word or like I try
Okay.
to get it as close to a word as I can. And it's
Mm-hmm.
it's just like what's the leading edge of what I'm learning. And
Mm.
in 2000, I want to say 2013, um, my theme, and I couldn't get it down to a word, because I wouldn't want my word to be fear, but it
Mm-hmm.
was to not make decisions based on fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it seemed to me, and it still does, that fear is always present in our life. And if we're not aware of the fear, that actually the fear is controlling us. And
Yeah.
so, oh, I need to identify the fear so then I can make decisions about it. And then as that the work in that year, and then the work always continues after that. It's not like, well, that year's done. Like, but okay, these are life lessons and growth. And so it was like I would change my orientation typically and move towards the fear.
Mm. Yeah.
So instead of like living in a smaller life, like, oh, I want to live in a bigger, more expansive life. Can
Mm-hmm.
you tell me some of like whatever you're comfortable or want to share about like your journey with fear, or like how did this
Yeah.
become something that is so important to you and that you want to help others with? Like how did that come about?
Yeah. Well, it's I think a common misconception when uh which I don't think, it doesn't sound like you have this misconception, but I've had a lot of people kind of jokingly or seriously prod or ask like, "Oh, you are a fear coach, so you have no fear." And that is could not be further from the truth, and is,
Mm-hmm.
very much the reason that I have immersed myself in these conversations, is because I am human and I experience fear and anxieties and highs and lows like everyone else, and maybe at a heightened state to the average person. I'm a very emotional person. I'm a very sensitive person, um, and and so the kind of genesis for me was um, a period of time where I was not aware of my relationship with fear. Before I moved out to LA, I was living in New York, and at that time, I was deep in the performing arts. I was going to modeling castings and studying acting, and not I was not in nature at all. I was in the middle of the city and really struggling emotionally. And when I some point in New York, I was introduced to, or reintroduced to, rock climbing. A friend of mine who was my gym buddy, he and I both were really bored with the whole like pick stuff up, put stuff down type of workout regimen. And and so he mentioned that there was a climbing gym near our apartment, and as soon as I walked into that space, I lit up, and it was this like flood of memories of my childhood and how much fun I had climbing. And so, two things happened. One, I felt deeply in love with this activity, and two, I found something that I just liked to do, and naturally kind of could grow and excel at, without a lot of intention right off the bat. And it was just fun. All of it was fun. The failure was fun. The success was fun. I just wanted to be there. And so I decided I need to be somewhere where this is much more center stage. And I wasn't ready to stop doing the performing arts thing. And so I decided LA was the place to go, where there's more climbing and also still this kind of city life and creative buzz. And that that transition marked the beginning of an awareness, kind of like what you were saying with your theme of the year, where I realized that I had been making so many decisions based off of fear and turning away from things rather than moving towards things. And that's a big theme in um, my work with fear, is recognizing, are we, am I running away or am I running towards? And I recognized that I had been running away from so many things in my life just based off of fear of failure, fear of ridicule, fear of judgment, fear of, you know, all the things. And there was something about climbing specifically that I didn't I experienced fear in a different way. And I I think in large part, maybe the biggest impact was the community that is in the climbing world, and the friendships and support systems that I came in touch with. And I felt safe doing dangerous things and taking risks, and I felt supported and I felt seen. And I started excelling in the sport and excelling in my sense of self and my confidence and my um, just peace of mind. And I so that's like this moment of like, why is this working? What is like, why does this little world at Stronghold Climbing Gym, why is this so positive for me? And I kind of, long story long, I was like, oh, it's when I'm here, I can move through fear in a positive way. And then it became, okay, well, how do I do that the same way with my career, with my relationships, with, how I move through everyday life. And um, and when I started to recognize the positive patterns that I had in the climbing community, it affected everything else in a positive way. And then it's like, oh, I have to talk about this. Like, am I alone in this experience? Is anyone else,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
feeling held back or feeling dampened by this connection, their specific way that they're reacting to fear?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's when the workshops began at the gym. Um, and it was very, very quickly, it was not just about climbing, it was about so much more. um, yeah, that's where it began.
I love it. Okay, so the workshops were the first foray into this being a community, or you stepping into I don't know if you would have viewed it that, I don't know how you viewed it, but like a leadership or like a facilitation kind of role.
Yeah, it was my intention was a facilitation. My intention was to invite a discussion. And i I always knew that I had a um, a gift of hearing and
Mm-hmm.
listening and seeing
Mm-hmm.
people and really showing up for who they are in any given moment. And
Mm-hmm.
I love teaching, and I'd been teaching at the gym already, teaching technical skills and strength and conditioning. And the first workshop, I didn't set a limit on participants, and over 20 people showed up. And I was like, first of all, this is, I mean, what a validation of
Yeah, yeah.
my curiosity. Was like, oh, I'm really not alone here. And then I was like, oh, the me thinking that I could just bring people together and a conversation would just happen was a little naive. And it does need somebody to move things in different directions. And so that from then on, I limited it to 6 participants, and really give time for, it's about my role. I feel like I'm just a cheerleader. It's
Mm-hmm.
asking questions, and like you said, it's drawing out of people what they already have within them. um, and just listening is so powerful. Most of the time, allowing people to just say their thoughts out loud to a group and recognize that they're not alone in that experience.
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, and it was that for a long time, for 4 or 5 years. And and then there was a couple moments during the pandemic where I was invited to lead workshops outside of the gym setting. And same thing happened. I led a workshop and 36 people showed up over Zoom, which I'd never done over Zoom before. And it objectively, it was not my most productive or successful workshop. And I was like totally floundering, being like, whoa, I need to hear everyone, and I can't even see them, and I can't hear their reaction to me because everyone's on mute. And like, I can see this person in the bottom right corner is cooking eggs, and like I'm just like totally, totally out of my wheelhouse here. And so it's like, yeah, it's been this like really powerful honing process. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun as well.
Oh, that's really great. It's very interesting. Like right as it is just like come just like really clear in my mind. And just I was like, okay, I'm gonna say this. Like this seems really true. Like you're a very good communicator. And right when I had that thought and I was like, I'm gonna say this out loud. Um, you said I have the gift of hearing and listening, like in the next breath. And I was like, wow. Because that's like how are you going to be such a good communicator? Well, you've actually listened to people. There's like the pausing and the taking the breath um and I think that's associated with the warmth that I think how you and this is true of like when you said it also my brain makes a lot of connections, so I'm just making connections from you said like that and there was that synergy. I was like, wow, he's a great communicator, and essentially you're like, I'm a great communicator. You just said it differently. um and that you said it as a gift, right? Which we could go into that, right? Like where does like our capacity come from,
Mm,
which I think is related to our relationship to fear, right? When
mhm,
you kind of know who you are, and I think that's a life's work, like evolving, getting in depth in that. But then there's always like that, and we'll probably get into that more with other questions. But the connection I wanted to make, let me see if I can remember it because my brain jumps around quite a bit. But when you're talking about climbing
mm.
and how you just started to apply things, well, now what do I do? Can I take this into my uh how I go about my career and like how I envision my career and relationships and all these different, and the phrase that popped into my head then and it is there again too with like, okay, I have this gift of hearing and listening, is like how you do anything is how you do everything.
Mm,
um
mhm.
that's I'm quoting somebody and not giving them the credit because I can't doesn't occur to me in my mind who said that right now, but that there's this, so I love that and I really resonate with that. Is there anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, it's like with more specific to the fear experience, it's um, something I just was writing about yesterday was the idea of um, what you practice when you're calm is how you perform when you're in panic, and that
Mm,
like how we do anything is how we do everything. And what I've recognized with the conversations on fear is that there seems to be a like we understand that if we want to get good at piano we have to practice piano, and we understand that if we want to perform a piano piece beautifully we don't wait to try it for the first time on stage in front of an audience.
mm-hmm,
We sit in a quiet, controlled,
mm-hmm,
comfortable, safe space and slow
mm-hmm.
down and
Yep.
make mistakes and all these things, and that same process is available and so powerful if we do the same approach with fear, because it doesn't I can't try a new way of reacting to fear in the moment of fear. It just won't work. If it does, it's a happy accident. But
Mm-hmm,
um,
mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that saying, how we do anything is how we do everything. I think it can be
Yeah,
extrapolated a lot in the fear process.
yeah. You just dropped some really great insights, some really great wisdom. Uh, yeah, what you practice in calm is um, what you do in panic.
Yeah.
Uh, yes, like that. I find myself, and it seems this way. I don't know if you would use this term, but I find myself living a more contemplative life, right? Creating more space around things, being more in nature, looking for beauty all around. Can I notice the light
Mm.
coming in the, I guess it's on my face, the light's coming
Yeah.
in my blinds. Like, can I look at that and see? notice the beauty, or is there a bird at the bird feeder, or, butterfly going by, or what
Mm-hmm.
smells, or just like noticing what's happening in my body and how that aligns with joy and gratitude.
Mm,
And I think we're kind of getting into it. So I'll ask just the next question, which is, what do you think it means to live your healthiest life?
mm. Yeah, I've been thinking about that um, since you sent the preview of the questions, and I think the only way I know how to answer and feel really um, authentic about it is to be
Hmm.
really general and broad because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know how everyone's unique experience is, and so mine is what I come to is balance, and um, I'm training for this really hard physical challenge coming up in December, and I've been really shocked by the how imbalanced I felt when I was staying strictly connected to my regiment. And I was so confused because I was like, I love this stuff though. I love hard challenges. I know the benefit of working your ass off. I know that. I know the benefit of my heart pounding in my chest and my breath moving through my body and sweat coming out of my pores. I know the benefit. Why doesn't this feel that good? And
Mm,
I finally was like, oh, because I am not offering any opportunity for rest and recovery and
mm,
just like quiet, and I'm working so hard that I've lost the balance.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I think of those times where I'm on vacation for too long, and I'm like,
Yeah.
holy smokes, if I don't have a task right now, I am going to lose it. And it's like, yeah, everything comes down for me to balance, and how am I teetering?
Hmm. Yeah, I think balance is something that, yeah, people have different perspectives on. Um, and so I'd love to unpack this like a little bit.
Yeah.
When I remember being shocked by somebody that at the time, I really looked up to, and she was just like, "Oh, balance, no, ha, that's not a thing," and I was like, "What?" She's decades older than me, and you're like looking for the wisdom, and that was
Mm-hmm.
really, really unnerving for me at the
Mm,
time. And then over time, I think I understood that it's not like that. I think what she was trying to say is like, you need to do what is
mm,
like you're doing at the time. Like, so you're doing this training right now. And
mm-hmm.
so balance in your life is probably more of your life balance looks different now
Yeah.
than when you're not training. So that I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
and that made me feel like a lot better about it,
Yeah.
of just kind of, I think she was kind of saying just be all into what you're doing at the time. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
feel this is something you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
kind of like go for it.
Yeah.
Another thought I have, and then I'd love to hear your just unpack more of what is this balance, is like I came to realize after that, because I think then I was like thinking about it. And so and this is probably about a decade ago, and I'm thinking about balance, and I'm striving for balance, and a lot of people do, but that's almost like trying to, it seemed like a light bulb for me in my experience that striving for balance is kind of like striving for happiness.
Mm,
Like the way for happiness is not like to like be in pursuit of it, but it's
mm-hmm.
actually to like live your values.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
so I'd
happiness
love
is a
to,
byproduct.
yes, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like the, like you can't focus on happiness to get happiness.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So um, it's not, yeah, you can't be focused on the end. Like you have to be, it's probably something about like, I don't know, like being in the present moment, right? If
Mm-hmm.
like, because there's a lag, right, in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
emotions and things, and like the things that you do over time, lead lead to that. So I don't want to, I'm talking a lot. So I'm curious about just what, as you're saying to live a healthy life is balance, and then gave some examples of times where you feel out of balance. Like how do you know when you're out of balance? How do you know when you're in balance? What
Mm,
helps you feel, what are for you, like, how do you become balanced? What does that
yeah,
look like?
yeah, that's a great question. I, because I can point to a number of times also in my training where I have come to different conclusions of what balance meant in that moment. And there have been times where I've been exhausted and feeling like it's impossible. There's not enough hours in the day to train and go teach and be a good partner and eat, 3 meals and, all the things that are happening. And I'll check in with myself and say, okay, well, is it helpful to keep pushing, or what is your goal right now? And sometimes, because that balance, I think, is, it changes depending on your perspective. If you zoom out, I know that after December 7th, I won't be training anymore. The whole experience will be behind me, and I will be, directly after December 7th, I'll be in hardcore recovery mode. And,
Mm-hmm.
how is that going to tilt the scales in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
experience? Um, and then when I zoom really close in, and I'm, this weekend I had a 20-mile day on Saturday and then a 10-mile day on Sunday. And if I zoom really far in, I'm like, I'm so wrecked and I can't see the I can't see that moment after. And um yeah, I think that the what I do to find the balance, or to consider the balance, is it's like an active experiment. I never know if I am going to achieve the balance, and I never know if I'm doing the right thing. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do, what I think I've recognized the most is that if I sit and think about it, that's the least helpful. And
Okay.
if I
Uh-huh.
take some action, even just with that consideration of like, I know I'm hurting right now, so choose something. Choose either to continue pushing and just do it. Just make the choice and push, and stand by it and find out how that plays out by doing. Or make the decision that you're pushing too much and take a break, and don't judge yourself for taking a break either, and live by it, and go. And if you're going to take a break, don't half take a break. Go fucking lie down on the couch and just
Yeah.
be for a bit. And I don't know when it's right or wrong, but I do know that I asking myself what I need, and then taking action off of that rather than just going mindlessly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It feels, maybe it's just a, it feels compassionate checking in, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and it, maybe it isn't actually bringing balance, but it gives me this feeling of like I'm considering it.
Yeah. Well, I think that, yeah, if I, because to me, like, as I've thought about balance, I think it is like, are you living your values? And that's kind of what I hear in there. And then rather than getting stuck in, am I making the right decision? Like, no, I never know if I'm making the right decision. The only way, but if I can get more data, that'll help. So I'm going to
Yeah.
make a decision and do it, and then I'm going to reflect on it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh and that seems really true to me, is like life
Mm-hmm.
is full of so many opportunity, like decisions. It requires us, and so a lot of times in order to deal with that, we automate decisions, right? We just like,
Mhm.
we go to the grocery store and we get the same, we like go through the same patterns, or we take the same route to work, or we communicate with people in similar patterns or things. But you're highlighting the importance of like pausing and then just seeing like, okay, I decided to lay on the couch instead of do the run. How's that going? Or okay, I did the run, and then you'll probably do it later, right? Like,
Mhm.
so if you're using training as an example, what you could do in this real time, and then okay, after that, I'll see how I did. Okay, I feel more erect, but is that necessarily bad? Well, I have a very hard physical challenge that I'm scaling up towards. So, yep, maybe I still feel wrecked right now, but imagine if I try to do this thing without like
Yeah.
any of this training,
Yeah.
versus like you're just like, no, I really think my body just needs this time. I'm going to take it. And then maybe you find, oh wow, like my training is so much better.
Yeah.
And because I, as a with my physical therapy background,
Yeah.
and I'm moving into coaching, but I kind of have two prongs. I can't really decide. That's a little bit of my issue, is I have difficulty picking just the one
Mhm.
thing. So I love to take, I still love to help people from a movement perspective. So moving coaching is something I'm interested in.
Mhm.
Rest is just one of like the 6 pillars of, if you're going to have a healthy, move healthily, have a healthy movement system, like, rest is really essential to it. But
Mhm.
there's all these other components, and it's always challenging. It's always, and everybody's different, and it's different where you're at in your particular phase of life. Like what that's going to look like if you're training for um like such a long run like you
Mhm.
are, versus, oh, I'm just trying to be healthy right now, and
Yeah.
like it's going
Yeah.
to be a very very different, what even just within those, I call them movement pillars, like even what that
Yeah.
looks like.
Yeah.
But
Because
you do it and you'll find
there's
out. Yeah, go ahead.
there's so many times where I try to be as honest as I can with on the social media platform, so it's not just uh, the highlight reel of how everything's always awesome, and so I try to be as you know forward with like today sucks, like today is not easy, and I'm struggling, and I get a lot of I think I feel the intention of support where the people will, my close friends and my family would like, dude, just stop, like just take a day off, and I'll sit there and go, well, that's not the goal. I've taken today, like I've taken enough days off that I already know what that looks like. And so
Hmm.
right now, what I'm more curious about is what happens if I push harder. And
Hmm.
then there are other days where it just feels different. And I go, nope, today's the day off. And I'm doing that now. And then I, text my mom, I go, you'll be proud of me. I took a day off.
Yeah. Right, which is, it's always nice to, yeah, have your parents be proud of you, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
trickle down, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, there is no, something I learned in my climbing training was there is no never, there is no always. And,
Mm,
and
mhm,
it's like, it's a more complex way of living. It requires more attention. It requires more improvisation, and it takes away that kind of automation that I think a lot of it. There are so many things in my life that I've automated. There were 5 years in my life where I wore nothing but black because I was like, I
mhm,
don't want to think about this, what I'm
yeah,
wearing.
mhm,
Um, but that type of intentionality, it doesn't allow that automation, and so it is, that like quest for balance really isn't even a quest for balance. It's really like a quest for making sure I'm just asking the questions,
mm,
and then acting and standing by it.
mhm. I love it. I'll definitely, I love this. Thank you so much. What what are you currently learning about what it means to live your healthiest life?
Hmm. That's a great question. There's so much. There's so much happening in my personal orbit right now,
Hmm.
and I think what I continue. It's a lesson that I is not new to me, and I think there's a theme of in my life that I can recognize of repeat lessons that
Yeah.
I tend to need reminders for, and um, I think as somebody who it's kind of an ironic imbalance of someone who loves showing up for people and offering support. um, I am forever learning that I need to ask for the
Hmm.
same.
Yeah. Hmm. I'm gonna try not to cry.
Yeah, me too.
But it's but it's like I'm also very I'm like, oh no, oh no. I mean, not
Yeah,
I don't feel bad about crying at all, but yeah. Uh
I'm with you,
it's
dude.
such a
I'm a
yeah,
crier. I'm a crier
yeah. Yeah.
through
Okay,
and
well
through.
this is gonna be we can do it. Let's have it. I mean it's now it's yeah, it's already I think I'm cresting. It's making its way over
Yeah,
the
there's the
dam.
surface tension is there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, oh no. Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah, it's hard to find that support. I think I'm just curious now of like what it is that has creates that roadblock in seeking out the support. And I think there's a, as much as I want to show up for people, it creates this self-awareness that can very easily turn into judgment.
Mm,
and
mm,
and then it and then I'm, you know, so tuned into the type of support that I want, or that I become judgmental uh of like how will it be received, or how will, if I ask for support and someone shows up in the way that they know best, and I will be like, wow, that wasn't what I was looking for. And it
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
um yeah, that's
mm,
interesting. I hadn't thought about that before.
mm.
And I think that just kind of reveals how, it's how you do anything is how you do everything. There's some of that same a lot of that same judgment, or that exact same judgment, is what I'm putting on myself
Yeah.
as I try to show up and support others.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah.
Wow. So just yesterday I was having a conversation with somebody. I've gone through changes in my life that have just really like my personal life is like not how it was a few years ago. I could
Mm-hmm.
just say that in a nutshell. And I was just talking to a new friend, somebody that just really seems like, wow, not too dissimilar to kind of like the conversation, like, okay, I don't know if I've really had a conversation with you in person, maybe we've said
Mm-hmm.
hi in the gym or something, but
Mm-hmm.
that we can then have a conversation like
Yeah.
this, like that. It's
Yeah.
just like, oh, yeah, I can hold space for this conversation. You can too. So I was having a conversation with somebody that's, new in my life from this summer and experience we had together. And we're just having, just working on that commitment, or that, well, it's not automatic. There's nothing automatic about this, right? We're trying to
Mm-hmm.
establish this, like, oh, do you want to be in my life? I think I'd like to be in your life, those sorts of things, and continue
Mm-hmm.
that. And she very early on. So this was our first phone call since we had an experience together in person in a group. But in a text, she had said to me, because she asked me how I was doing, and I'm just an authentic person. And I was like, oh, on that particular. And she was just like, if you ever, need a listening ear, like let me know. And and I'm going to try. That's like, this is a dangerous zone because even because that it just feels so rare because I knew that she really meant it. Even though, I was like, oh my God, like here's somebody that really means it. I have like this desire and this longing for it. Um, and am I, so speaking of fear, like, oh, this is a growth edge. This is okay, where is my longing, my desire, my needs? And then, oh, it might actually be met in this person in this way and these,
Mm,
but in order to do it, I'm going to have to take action. I'm going to
mhm,
have to initiate that phone call or text and say, hey, can we talk? And then we
mhm,
plan a time. And I was like, wow, this feels really new
mm,
because that's exactly like I'm going to ask for help.
mhm,
I'm going to say I need a listening ear.
mhm,
And I'm like, and so then so that text, maybe came a month ago. And then we were chatting for the first time yesterday. So it's very fresh in my mind because when we were talking, I was like, I really wanted to make a point, like, because this was part of the taking a step forward. Like, I'm going to say to her, that was really meaningful. I'm going to say to her, this is going to be really hard for me to do. And it means so much to me. And I plan to do it. And,
mhm,
and then reciprocate that. So I feel that so deeply. And then just how you made a connection into judgment is really like, I wrote a book all exploring judgments that I have
mm,
and like how they came to be. Um, like what in my past kind of conditioned me to believe a certain way, or what decisions have I made at different times, and just trying to be honest about judgments I have. And so you inviting that into this conversation of how that's something for me because I relate to that. Like, and so, but I don't know how conscious I was of that connection. So I can say, okay, yep, I can come to like these conclusions about situations or people and feel firmish in that, or like have, I feel like I have some legs to stand up on that because of my internal experience. And it's very interesting to me how you have this awareness and you've linked it to like your need for help.
mm.
And uh whoa, I'm gonna definitely be yeah, definitely be thinking about that.
Yeah, me too. It's and I yeah, it is again. It's like asking the question and then making a decision. And I have so many people in my life um, that really know how to be that listening ear and that support for me. And we have a lifetime of relationship together, and many times that we can both point to us not being that listening ear. I'm mostly pointing
Mm-hmm.
to like family and
Sure.
or like childhood friends who you have the whole ups and downs of life experience together. And they're yeah, the letting go of the expectation of who is going to be on the other end of that conversation. And I mean, it hits so hard, those moments where I remember I was having a conversation with my mom, and she was asking how everything was going, and I was definitely holding back the how hard things were.
Mm-hmm.
And and she said something, just it was probably so simple, of like, that sounds really hard. And
Yeah.
oh man, just those like
Hmm.
when you think you're just having a chat, you know, you think you're having an automated phone call, and
Mm.
and and somebody surprises you with
Hmm.
that space of like, you can just let it go. You know, you don't have to explain, and you don't have to protect right now. You can
Hmm.
just be, and I hear you
Hmm.
is such a gift.
Hmm.
And I the judgment piece, I think about judgment all the time. And I my partner and I crack each other up all the time. We are professional people watchers. And I mean, to a fault. We have a problem going out in public together, and like it's hilarious. And you know, our the whole game is like playful judgment of like we're like
Hmm.
telling
Yeah.
people's life
And
stories,
stories. Yeah.
and just like fascinated with everything happening around us. And you know, I used to kind of be worried about. I go back and forth still with judgment. Like being judgmental sounds like a inherently negative thing. I think another, like being selfish sounds like an inherently negative thing. Um, and fear sometimes sounds like an inherently negative
Hmm.
thing. And I think all of those, you know, being selfish, so important in terms of safety and survival, and being able to show up for other people. If I'm never selfish and I am burnt out, and I've not put myself and my own needs first, then I'm what I've learned is that I'm a shell of a human, and I don't have much energy to share. And if I ignore fear, I make reckless decisions. And if I let fear take over, I don't step out of my house, and I don't
Hmm.
experience the beauty of life. And if I don't judge things, if I don't come to conclusions, I'm kind of just a floating nebulous, and I don't know where I stand. I have no grounding.
Hmm.
and and I'll, you know, that kind of leads to learning the same hard lessons over and over if I don't finally conclude like, wow, I'm judging that to be not helpful.
Hmm. Hmm.
But again, if I don't have the curiosity to ask and check in and say, well, okay, where's this judgment coming from, and have I been curious enough to earn this judgment? And so
Mm.
if the answer is no, if I haven't asked all the questions, if I've come to that judgment too quick, then I think that's the one that I am weary of. And
Mm.
but there are also times where I'm like, whoa, I explored this with all my curiosity, and I am judging this to not be good, or I'm judging this to
Yeah.
be really good. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
either one.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, nothing is one thing. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's so true. Like the two sides of a coin, or saying things are both and, it's this
Mm-hmm.
and it's that simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
To say judgments can be harmful and unhelpful, and judgments are essential.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can I explore that? And I loved the have I been curious enough to earn this judgment? That's like
Mm.
that framing of the relationship between openness
Mm-hmm.
and the structure that a judgment gives you, I
Mm-hmm.
think is very um it's very intriguing to me. Like the concept of like earning a judgment is
Mm.
like, oh, like a judgment shouldn't just come, like if a
Yeah.
judgment just comes like that, that's not earned, right? That's going to
Yeah.
be, but where, which sounds very similar. Like that was kind of like my whole book process, which
Mm.
was so helpful in my life. Like it was a very vulnerable project, right? Because I'm saying, okay, well, here's my beliefs about something, even if I don't want them to be my beliefs, right? There's like can be this discomfort, and that even asking questions about what are my judgments, right? So then you can say, well, is this helpful or is this harmful? Versus the, well, I just saw that person and therefore this. But then we also do have to make very fast decisions
Yeah.
of like persons walking down the street, like
Yeah.
is it safe or is this dangerous?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm in the ocean and a wave's coming, like, and I'm trying to play, like, is that a wave that is going to harm me?
Yeah.
Like the risk benefit
Yeah.
analysis of like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
here for this experience. Like, am I going to try to ride that wave, or like,
Mm-hmm.
do I need to seek safety in some kind of capacity? Or
Yeah.
you even highlighted it with like climbing. I can't remember your phraseology, but like the never and the of
Oh, there,
climbing. What's
yeah,
the
there is no never, there is no always.
there is no never and there is no always. And to me, that just meant like, oh, you could do like the same like route, but it's just going to be, especially if you're climbing out in nature, it's just like
Yeah.
that hold could have been there. And then the next time you go put a hand on it, we don't like those kind of routes, but
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things can
Mm-hmm.
happen, or a
Mm-hmm.
bird can come by, or you're sweatier, or the sun hits a different spot. Is that what that kind of means? Or is
Yeah. It's in the climbing, this, the climber's perspective, and also from a tactical standpoint, from a preparation standpoint, and from like how do I, from a safety standpoint, how am I going to rig this scenario? How, like, what are the tools that I'm going to use? And so there isn't a knot that always is the best knot, and
mm-hmm,
there isn't a method that is never okay. And context
mm-hmm,
matters. Context defines the whole experience, and that's, what I love about incident reports. I love the objective, looking at a something that went really wrong and looking at it through an objective lens, not through a lens of blaming or
mm-hmm.
emotion, but looking at what did work, what didn't work, and then recognizing that even though this thing didn't work this time, in other contexts, that might be what you need to do.
Yeah.
And so it, again, it's like it takes away that kind of mentality, immediately puts you into this like, I can't automate any of this. There isn't
Mm-hmm,
an always, there isn't an
mm-hmm.
ever. I have to ask the right questions
Yeah.
for every scenario.
Yeah. Yeah, that there has to be like an engaged problem solving. Like, I think, yeah, when you think about anything in the wilderness, right? Like you could
Mm-hmm.
just be like, well, that one time I didn't bring any layers, and I didn't bring extra water, and I didn't bring extra fuel, and I didn't bring a headlamp. And so
Mm-hmm.
therefore I never need that, is like such a, like a newbie, like
Yeah.
it's such like a flawed process that I think
Mm-hmm.
anybody that spends time like remote in nature, there has to become this respect for, yeah, just the varied experiences that happen.
Yeah. The potential.
The
Respect,
potential. Yeah.
respect the potential. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that I love the conversation around what you were talking about with like the wave, and making like, how do we make a quick judgment, and how do we make those quick, because those are those zoomed in moments where thinking is not gonna get you somewhere else, right? Like,
Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
the more
Yeah.
I think about this wave,
Mm-hmm.
the less I am going to be able to decide.
Yeah.
It will
Yep.
decide for me eventually. I think that's, people talk about rock climbing being so scary. I'm like, surfing, if
Yeah.
I need to be humbled, I go to the ocean, because
Mm-hmm.
now the wall is not, it's chasing you. And it's
Yeah.
a different wall every time.
Every
And
time. Yeah.
it's you don't know necessarily, depending on what kind of break you're at, you don't know when the wall's coming. It's like this
Mm-hmm.
whole,
Right.
there's
Mm-hmm.
whole thing of like, I have to make these quick decisions. And sometimes some might look at it and go, well, that's where fear is our best tool. And I think that in certain contexts, we are correct in that, like, we're gonna fight, flight,
Mm-hmm.
freeze, or fawn. Fawn, you can't really fawn to a wave. It doesn't. There's no
Mm-hmm.
appeasing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Freezing in that scenario is definitely, I would think, is the most detrimental. But okay, am I gonna get out of here? Am I gonna bail and flee, or am I gonna fight and, like, we're gonna interact face to face?
Mm-hmm.
And um, fear, it evolves when we it's like the more we experience fear in a practicing way, so
Mm-hmm.
in those, like, calm, safe environments, the more I go to the beach on small wave days,
Yeah.
the more I can trust that quick judgment when I'm there on a big wave day. and
Mm-hmm.
and it's so, I love that relationship with fear, because the more we experience fear with smaller stakes, we're going to still experience fear when it's big stakes, but it shifts from fear to awareness, and shifts from relying on this, primal reaction that is, it just wants us to survive.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily want us to live a full, a
Yeah.
beautiful life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
um, but the
Mm-hmm.
more we experience it, the more it turns into awareness, rather
Mm-hmm.
than this, like, panic, or this kind of, like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever had an experience where you feel like fear blacked you out, but it that's what it can that's how visceral fear can be.
Yeah.
And the less we experience fear, the closer proximity we are to that blackout experience. And the more we experience fear in a productive way, the more we are actually aware in that moment and can make a smart and informed decision
Mm-hmm.
in a timely manner.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like anybody like that worked, say, like an emergency department, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
like it is needing, like you practice all these scenarios, you practice so that when the call comes and this is like a uh life or death for this person,
Mm-hmm.
that that you have the CPR, about the tourniquets, like
Mm-hmm.
um you have your protocols, your lists that are going to triage, right? That you're going to
Mm-hmm.
decide what needs to happen for this person. Are they needing, drugs? Do they need some tests? Do they need to go immediately to the operating room?
Mm-hmm.
What needs to happen versus somebody like completely not trained, right? That comes across a scene, like a car accident or something,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like what you're saying, that can just be like more people I think are going to be prone towards like
Mm-hmm.
um that blackout of like, what do I do, like I don't even know, versus the yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I like that fear into awareness. And then yeah, I mean there we could talk about this for so long, because in my brain I'm like, oh, we could talk about breath, but um just to keep the podcast at a reasonable length, which is always my challenge. I'm gonna move us along. So, question number 4 is: what is something that you wish that people knew more about living their healthiest life?
Mm. Um, I think one thing, especially in our general, like, social media climate today, um, is that the like the more, what is the word, like, the more, well, yeah, it kind of goes back to the always and never piece, and the curiosity, and the nuance and the complexity of unique individual selves. um, the more that somebody says, should,
Mm.
or
Mhm.
you know, assume like I've had so many experiences where I've been in a public setting and I'm doing my training, and somebody will come over and go, "Oh, you should do it this way." And I just look at them
Mm.
and
Mhm.
what I now ask is, "What is your goal?" And I get them to tell me their goal. And then I just calmly and politely say, "That's really cool. That's not my goal." And it feels
Mm.
like there is this quest for living a fulfilling and whole and healthy life, and the experts, the self-acclaimed experts, are trying to find the package deal and go, "This is the way, and if you want it, you should do it this one way.
Mhm.
It will always work, and this thing that you're doing will never work." and and
It's
I'm
like,
just,
yeah, BS alarm is going off.
yeah, I'm like, oh, I wish, I'm like, I wish more people knew that there is there is no always, there is no ever, never, and there is no should.
Mm.
And I think,
Mhm.
at a risk of claiming one thing is the best thing, it's like, stay curious
Mhm.
and ask more
Mhm.
questions. And when someone asks a question and the answer is short and concrete, it's like, whew, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, yeah,
I need
yeah,
more.
yeah.
I need more nuance. I need you to ask. Wait, like when people ask me questions in my coaching, I the I immediately have, you know 10 questions come to my mind for
Mhm.
them,
Mhm.
and because I cannot distill the answer down to this like linear quest. And um, and that frustrates me sometimes in my life, where I go, God, what do I do? Like, what can I just always do to make it okay? Like, it's
Mhm.
not it.
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
there. And so I go, okay, I'll start with today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like making me think, just, from my perspective, with like 2 decades nearly as a physical therapist, that it's like somebody comes up to you, it's like outside of this is not somebody that has a scheduled appointment. This is, we're at a party, we're at the gym, wherever,
Yeah.
and they say, what should I do? Oh, I have this, oh my, and they're pointing to whatever said body part is, which I really enjoy helping people, but it's like,
Yeah. How
and it
much
made
time do
me
you have?
yeah, well, it made me realize is like, I was like, oh, when I schedule an exam, and that's basically what I tell people. I'm like, well, I could say some things right now, but it's going to be more akin to like you doing a Google search
Yeah.
for your problem. But if you really want to know, like, let's set aside some time and let's do an evaluation. And my evaluation is just this inquiry, like these questions.
Hmm.
So you say you have, hip pain. Well, I don't know. It could be a bursa, it could be blah, blah, blah. I can rattle off all the different muscles, or is it the joint, or is it actually coming down from your back? And then there's the whole, well, why did it become even an issue to begin with, which can be completely different. You can have people with the same kind of pain and a very different mechanism that caused it, to a very different behavior, with somebody in a car accident or with somebody
Mm-hmm.
training for a run, and they just, uh, weren't really set up for whatever they were trying to do. So I love the curiosity and the nuance, and like, because even my practice has been called like artisan physical therapy, just to convey the idea that you're unique,
Mm-hmm.
just in general in the world. Like, there's never been anyone like you, there'll never be anyone like you again. And then the circumstances surrounding what happened, like, you now is not you tomorrow, is not
Mm-hmm.
you yesterday. So kind of, where are we at? And I want to help you be an expert in your body in this moment, in this time, that you really understand and know what to do.
Yeah.
But you can't translate that to other people. Like, they
Mm-hmm.
can't then, maybe there's generalized principles, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, we all need rest. If you're not resting, then that's a problem. Oh, we all need strengthening if you're not doing that. But just this idea, but people want that. So people, it
Hmm.
does happen like at the parties, like people want that, or a lot of times people just abdicate like their responsibility for their well-being. I think we've been kind of conditioned to do
Mm.
that with the so I'm sure that I don't know how much you deal with that when people are because how you present yourself kind of attracts different people, so you might
Sure.
not deal with
Sure.
it as much, and I don't deal with it as much as I used to, but there's still like people that just want to be told what to do and they'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus like, oh, we need an interaction here. Actually, I'm gonna offer you this. We're gonna try
Hmm.
it. You're gonna offer me something back, and we're
Hmm.
gonna we're gonna figure things out. And well, can you just give me like 3 exercises that will keep me healthy for the rest of your life? No, I can't actually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I can do things like right now, but really, there's a lot of nuance. So we need to be doing all these things, and how that
Mhm.
works for you. I don't know. I can't actually tell you what time of day you should be doing it. I can say, oh, you
Hmm.
should do it probably this frequency, but I
Hmm.
don't, but it's like all this habit formation for people is really, it takes their interaction. And then just even if they're, for example, so in that same example, if they're doing a movement like an exercise, there's certain things that they could just be like, bang it out. Okay, I just need to do
Hmm.
this. But more often than not, people need to be mindful about how they're moving and how their body feels and what their alignment is like in order for
Hmm.
it to be successful. So there is all kinds of nuance. And even I think they need to have some kind of curiosity to
Yeah.
say, well, what does my body look like? Am I doing this right?
Hmm.
Is this the best? Okay, that's a tricky word. Is this the best way that I could do this right now?
Hmm.
Or probably a better way to say that is even, is there a better way that I could be doing this
Yeah. Yeah.
right now? Am I
Yeah.
optimizing this?
It's something that I think I've run into more than having people come to me and ask me for like, hey, give me a cookie cutter path to follow. Like, show me the shape, and then I'll make the shape, and then I'll be good forever. I don't get that a lot, but what I have run into on a number of occasions are people will go, hey, I want I want the end goal. What do I how do we get there? And then we'll talk about some different processes to get there, and they'll go, I can't do that. And I go,
Yeah.
oh, why do you say you can't do that? Well, because I just haven't been able to do that before, so I can't do that. And I go, okay. So do you think, and a lot of times what
Mm-hmm.
it'll be like, do you want to work with me? Like, do you think we're not a good fit then? And they're like, no, 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 I want to keep working with you. And I'm like, well, that's the best I have to
Yeah.
offer.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so if you
Yeah.
don't want to do that, and it's that's been um, an interesting experience. That's come up a number of times, and it was really hard for me because part of me feels like I'm doing a disservice, uh, charging somebody who is objectively just not going to do the things that we talk about, and is excited to show up still. And I'm like, well, you're not going to get the the product you're looking for. You're not going to arrive at the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
destination.
Mm-hmm.
And so am I enabling you to continue this avoidance, or like, what is my role here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so far, where I've gotten to is that it's not my job to get them there. It's just my job to
Mm-hmm.
give them the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I have had people change their perspective and go, okay, I'll try the thing that I previously thought I couldn't do. And I have people who I'm working with right now that have not taken the action yet,
Mm-hmm.
and they're totally content. And I'm like, oh, you're good. You're actually doing great in terms of like, if the goal is living a fulfilling life, you seem fulfilled.
Yeah.
You don't need to get there. It's like, you might not be aware that you actually don't even want to go to this place
Mm-hmm.
that you have
Mm-hmm.
sought me out to help you to get to. You're
Mm-hmm.
totally cool where you're at. And it brings you a lot of joy to have these conversations and to have somebody come and ask you
Mm-hmm.
these questions, and that's enough. And um, yeah, it's yeah, there's again, it's like those flip sides of the coin. Sometimes people are like, tell me
Mm-hmm.
what to do so
Yeah.
I can just do that and not think about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
um, and then people tell me what to do, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. That, and I, yeah, totally relate to that as well. Like, and it's interesting because like you're in a field, at least from my awareness, that this is kind of like a novel thing that you're kind of
Mm,
doing. And so
mhm,
it's kind of like a frontier, and, you know, you do you, and that's great. And
mhm.
it'll probably be hard for there to be a lot of expectations from
Yeah,
different. My training was very like didactic. You're going to be this, you're going to do that. And then when you
yeah,
get in the clinic, it's like you show competency and you're a good clinician if they're, you know, did it only take one visit, or did it just take like
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
less time you spend with them, like that makes you better.
yeah.
And I have found that that paradigm either I don't agree with or it just doesn't work for
Mhm.
me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and because I think like I'm like, no, I'm here to like help people live their healthiest life. And so
Mhm.
even if I calm down their pain in a visit, if I didn't help them, people can only absorb so much so fast. And this is, I
Yeah,
think, what I want to say, like, because I'm relating to people can only absorb so much so fast. They can only
yeah,
change habits so fast. And when things
yeah.
are really entrenched, and
Mm,
it takes a long time to change habits. And when you're doing like
mhm,
this deep work, and there's
mhm.
just like a mysterious things that happens with like what makes it like suddenly click, and there's all
Yeah.
kinds of failures. Well, I started and then I stopped, and then so
Mhm.
I view myself as anybody that's trying to help somebody with habit formation is like, what's the extreme though? The one extreme is just like, no, that's stupid, I'm never going to do it, bye, to
Yeah,
like, this is amazing, I'm doing it, I'm never stop doing it.
yeah,
There's so many touch points in between. So to me, when I
absolutely.
hear you say, oh, there's people that are like, nope, I'm not going to do that, that just means they're like,
Somewhere on the,
they're not in the action
yeah,
point, but
yeah,
there's something about them that like they're like, this rings true, or I have this curiosity, but they haven't taken that step yet. So it's like, to me, it's like, no, you're not taking somebody's money. Like, why are you wasting your money and your
yeah,
time being here? But it's really like that you are offering value to this person that
yeah.
does, and whether they get to that target or not, like you're, you know, if my goal is like a healthiest life, like, well, hopefully they'll be there.
Mhm,
But like, if you have defined like a thing they're really scared of. Oh, I'm going to
mhm,
perform at blah, 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 like
mhm,
this musical performer or this one woman show or climb, whatever.
mhm.
Maybe they'll never do that, but maybe they'll find out, yeah, like you said, that they never needed to. But there's like so much value and utility
Yeah,
to know kind of like what your North Star is, or like what your direction is, whether that's something that's like in a season, like, oh, actually, I didn't really need that to like have a meaningful life, or or it's something that's scaled bigger, that's actually like, oh, I thought I was headed that way, but I'm actually going to be
yeah.
this way. And that, uh, sorry to, I'm talking with my hands to our listeners. So I pointed in one direction and then like changed the orientation of my hand to point towards a different direction, that might be the value that has. So they might never reach that goal, but that doesn't mean anything about like the, yeah. So I, over time, have learned to just, okay, I'm just helping them, nudge them forward.
Yeah.
And maybe there's, yeah, and you're doing that. Like, I think of that too. Like, okay, maybe I need to have a candid conversation and say, are we a good fit? Like,
Mhm, mhm,
are we heading on a good trajectory? And
mhm.
if they're happy and they're there, like,
Yeah,
uh, but it's very, like, as humans, we're so speaking of complexity and nuance, like we're so very interesting, and like what
yeah,
motivates people and like how they,
yeah,
yeah, change
absolutely.
behavior.
Absolutely. I was working with a young girl last night, was coaching a bouldering team at the gym, and she was on this climb that she had done before, but she'd never finished this boulder. And it was the last move I think she was stuck on. And I had it was my first time coaching her, and I asked her, I was like, "Oh, have you tried moving your foot over and really leaning into it to reach?" And she goes, "I've tried it a million times." And I go,
Yeah.
and I laughed and I said, "Well, what about a million and one?" And she looked at me. It was like, oh my gosh, it was so fun.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
she
scrunched up
thought
face.
about
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah. She was like, "Whoa, you just that was fun." And okay,
yeah.
I'll do it for you.
Okay, yeah.
And she didn't make the move, but she did try it a million and one time. And I
Yeah,
was like, that's so fun.
yeah. I know. Yeah, and maybe this will be I'm not the same person I was like the prior time.
Yeah.
Um, we're gonna wrap up our conversation, but I do, before I let you go, there's one thing I would love to hear you share about, because
Sure.
you talked about joy and our
Mm.
conversation didn't really kind of go into that. Can
Hmm.
you talk to me about the relationship between like fear and joy? Or you kind of talked about that, I think, in
Hmm.
terms of your uh like what you're doing in your life.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah. Yeah. I think I said it earlier. I might have brushed past it, but thinking again with like fear, fear loves us. Fear wants us to survive. Fear does not care if we enjoy it. And so the positive relationship with fear is not getting rid of fear, because it's such a powerful tool. And if we have no fear, we might not survive to experience joy. But if we are overwhelmed with fear, we also won't be able to experience joy. And those moments of, fear can cloud or put a filter on the way we experience life in those slow moments. Fear wants to push the pace. Fear is the snap judgment. And if we are sitting on a surfboard floating out at the ocean, and we have a positive relationship with fear, and we can recognize that we are not in danger, we are now allowing ourselves space for joy, and smelling the smells and feeling the movement of the water. And that's the balance that I back to the balance piece, that's what I strive for with my clients and my own life is, uh, it's not about getting rid of, it's also not about being overwhelmed by, but being
mm,
in a place where we have the space for moments of calm and quiet and joy. I think that's where joy is. Uh, the other thing with joy that I recognize, and it kind of plays into the balance piece again, is that it requires contrast. And I certainly in my younger years was I confused joy with consistency or consistent high, and trying to be up here, and I mean, naturally, I am not capable of existing at that
mhm,
height
mhm,
always.
mhm,
And if I try to exist at that height, I will. It's away from my grasp. I can't maintain it. It's like what you were mentioning about pursuing happiness. It's like trying to speak silence. It's like as soon as you say it, it's gone. And um,
mm,
so for my life, I find so much joy in doing hard things, and those the like I kind of need to suffer at some
Mm,
point to
mm,
really be able to feel the joy. And yeah,
mm.
that's where I land with joy.
Thank you so much for this, for that, and just this conversation in general. Your insights and your way of just showing up in the world. I really value, and I'm really grateful that you're out there, just being you. And I think anyone who hears this podcast is just going to really benefit from your insights, just about life, and in particular about fear, and how to relate to fear. And I do, I'll put in the show notes for anybody that wants to get in touch with you, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so if anybody is interested in meeting with Dex, we'll have those notes in the show notes, that you can access him, and maybe follow you along on social media and your training. And so December 7th is the big day, huh?
Yeah, December 7th, I will be running just under 70 miles in a single push. And all of that whole process is in a goal of raising funds for the CR Club, and bringing more awareness to the beautiful land that Southern California has to offer, and protecting those beautiful lands. Um, yeah, go beyond .love. That's where you can find the journey.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, as always, I feel like I could just continue talking, because uh, there's so many points of just even like, well, how did trail running come about? And I didn't know. I knew you from the climbing gym, and then when I saw, I
Yeah,
was like, wait, he's trail running, and I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know that. And
yeah.
just like my experience and my relationship to trail running, and growth for that, and love for that. And so
Hmm.
I'm so glad, like, what a amazing, I've never aspired to something quite so intense. Your training run
Hmm.
this weekend was probably like the extent of what I've done in the mountains, which was no joke. So I
Yeah,
love, and I'll definitely be following along on your journey, and
thank
seeing
you.
how you're doing, and look forward to hopefully bumping into you at the gym soon. But
Yes,
thank you so
please.
much.
Thank you.
Uh, Thanks, Dex Ereon, for joining us on the
Absolutely.
podcast. And to everybody, may you always see the blessing. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Lyle Podcast. If you liked what you heard, you can find me on Instagram at the Elle, as well as YouTube, the internet, www.theelbatrell.com. And that's about it. And back here for our next episode of the podcast. Subscribe and leave a nice review if you think it'll be helpful for other people. Only then. Thanks. May you see the blessing.